Welcome, everyone. We will get started in just a few minutes. Thanks for joining. Hello, everyone. We'll get started in a minute or two, allowing folks to trickle in. Thanks for joining. Welcome again. We'll go ahead and get started in another minute or so. All right, it looks like we have a good number of participants, so let's go ahead and get started. So welcome, good morning, afternoon, and potentially evening. Hoping everyone had a great weekend. My name is Justine Beaudry, and I'm a member of the Revenue Enablement team, and happy to be kicking things off today for developing our Sales Edge session number 11. And we are fortunate to have a host of product and solution experts joining today. So please give a warm virtual welcome. Please use those reactions to Lars, Rohan, Megan, Maggie, and AJ. Thank you for being here. And thanks everyone, partners, employees, for joining this session. So our agenda for today is a discussion on Agentic AI and Agent Builder. And the product release for Agent Builder is just a couple of weeks away, so very exciting. And of course, we will leave plenty of time for your questions. So a few housekeeping items. A friendly reminder that the way that we gather questions for these sessions is through the Q&A. So please do your best to put your questions in the Q&A and not the chat. That way we can record those and include them in the Sales Edge session HighSpot page. Another reminder is that last week's quiz is due today, and you will find that in the chat momentarily if you missed that. It's also in the Academy Weekly from last week and out on the HighSpot Sales Edge page. And also want to congratulate Ross Kohlmeyer on being last week's winner. So Ross, congratulations, and please be on the lookout for some highlight points. And then lastly, please be sure to fill out the survey that will be provided at the end of this session. We want to continue to provide the content that you want in the format that you want. So please share your thoughts, the good, the bad, hopefully not the ugly, but we want that too. All right, and one more thing before I pass it over to Lars, a reminder that we did launch our fifth and final sales play, our growth theme of AI-led transformation, which will provide the content for you to spark those consultative conversations with your customers. So it's not just about knowing the tech or the product, which is important at the right time, but also about guiding your customers through their AI transformation, which is new for all of them. And speaking of the tech and the product, the Agent Builder Sales Kit will be available later this week. So, all right, team, time to plug into your inner innovator because we're about to dive into the future of smart selling. Joining us is one of the brilliant minds behind the features that make our product feel less like software and more like a sidekick. He's here to demystify Agent Builder, what it is, why it's a game changer, and how it's going to help you sell like you've got an AI co-pilot. So hit those reaction buttons and give a warm welcome not only to Lars, but to all of our presenters. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to our own PM powerhouse, Lars.
Thank you, Justine. Thanks for having us here. It's certainly exciting to talk about our upcoming release. Let me dive right in here. Quick disclaimer, obviously, we always do this. We're close to release, but this is still all plans. Things are still very well in motion. So just a typical safe harbor statement here that you already know. Before we dive into how agents work, let's back up a little bit and talk about how people actually work, how they process their work, right? All of us, we're looking for signals, right? Our calendars, photos that we see, documents that we see that are in our inbox, in our queue. We read them, so we basically analyze them, we respond with actions, we do something with them, and then we look for feedback, did it work? Did it work out? Is my manager happy with me? Whatever it is. We do this hundreds, even thousands of times a day. If you take like minor choices and micro decisions into account, I think the count is like 36,000 decisions per day. There's low stuff that doesn't even have anything to do with work. What do I eat for breakfast? The lights switch to yellow. Do I stop or do I hit the gas, right? And the friendly officer is going to give me feedback on how well I did, right? And then obviously there are the decisions we need to make for work, right? We need to go through our inbox. We need to read the documents that we have. A lot of the steps are data collection. They're smaller, localized the decisions that don't necessarily add value to our main job, updating third-party systems, making sure documents are signed, making sure all required documents are there. And all of that takes away from our main work, which should be caring for patients, advising our clients, asking the right question, building relationships with customers and partners. And those things can also take an emotional toll. There's such a thing as, decision fatigue. You do this all day long. You look at things and they can drown morale at some point. And they're just basic resources for your business when you're trying to compete in the market. And we get into some of the details later on. Agents can solve these problems by augmenting humans on operational tasks, as well as acting as an advisor, to think strategically. Agents are different from previous automation because they can remember context, they can reason, they can test their answers, and they can adapt to new situations. The progression of value that is delivered can be illustrated on the spectrum here. This is driven by the role of humans in the process. If you're more to the left-hand side, you hear a lot about agents, and people are talking about chatbots or about assistants. There's a lot of terminology out there. We're looking now with the agent builder, we're looking at task agents that are more proactive, that don't necessarily require that human interaction, that do things automatically. So as we move from left to right here, more work is shifted from the human to the agent, allowing the human to focus on higher value activities. And agent capabilities, including tool usage, decision-making, the level of autonomy, all of these things improve as you move from left to right. A lot of market players are now focusing on the assistants, script running task agents. While Highland really is focused on delivering enterprise agents. That's the future state that we're looking to do, where you have multi-agent software solutions that are designed to execute a business flow really from end to end. That can be like an orchestrated team of agents composing an executed dynamic context-aware sequence of steps and decisions that adapt in real time. But where we are right now is this step in the middle here. That's what we're delivering for this year. Those are the task agents that you can insert into a workflow that automate known repeatable workflows with known steps that have some tool usage and that can take action for you. Everybody is going to tell you that their agent is absolutely game-changing. It's the magic bullet, it can do all these fancy things, but half the time it's kind of like handing a calculator to someone who's never filed taxes and expecting a refund by noon, right? So when we say we're building industry-specific agents, we really mean AI that's useful out of the box. It's been built on real challenges that these industries face today. And when we're doing this, we're not starting from scratch. Highland has decades of experience, in financial services, government, insurance, healthcare. We know the documents, we know the processes, and most importantly, we should also know where things get stuck and where we can help improve things. So that's where the agent builder comes in, right? The agent builder lets your customers create AI agents that can read and understand documents, that can take action. You can kind of think of them as digital co-workers. You can assign them jobs, give them tools and goals. It's a low-code setup. Business users can configure and manage them. The agents act like a person. They read content, they make decisions, and it fits anywhere. It integrates with a panel, with OnBase, with CSE. You can use Automate. You can just drop them in where they are needed. One of the main steps to point out is that our agents work where the customer already has their content, right? There isn't a big migration that needs to happen before a project with AI agents can be started, right? We have content federation. Meet the customers where they are right now. So they don't need to migrate to some different cloud system or so just to be able to start utilizing AI features. We have the stack that is needed already. We have on-base workflows where you can integrate agents. We have Automate. If you want to take advantage of the full power of CSC, you can rebuild the processes there. You can build something completely new, or you can manage your change management and start in Automate. With the agent builder, you can create new agents from scratch that fit your use case, where you create a job description, where you create tools, instructions, expected outcomes. Or you can configure one. You can start picking one that is already built, that meets your requirements, and you can fine tune it and adapt to your needs. You can chain agents together. You can have a workflow or a process that includes multiple agents, each taking care of a step in the process. Later on, we're going to have agents that can collaborate automatically, right? Where agents can be used as tools, so the agent can make the decision when a different agent with a different set of skills needs to be involved. And most importantly, we're going to give you tools to manage the life cycle. When you create an agent, you want to test it. You want to make sure that it works, that it returns the response that you want. You deploy it and then you monitor it. You need observability where you can see, okay, an agent needs to make a decision. Why did it make the decision that it did? So you can review, you can improve, and you can create a new version of that agent that, again, you can test, deploy, monitor. It's a life cycle that will be going on where you can continuously improve the agents. When you configure an agent, one of the first things you do is you give it a high-level description that's really just for you or for other users to know at a quick glance what is the agent going to do. It's also helpful for other agents when they try to collaborate with other agents to use this description to actually get a good overview of what the results are going to be. We're going to have tool usage. You will hear the term MCP probably a lot. It stands for Model Context Protocol. It's a technical detail on how we implement tools. The protocol tells an agent, what tools it has available on an MCP server. It will tell it what kind of input those tools need and what kind of results to expect. So this means basically the agent doesn't have to guess what the result of a tool is. It knows exactly how to take an action, like pulling a document from OnBase or looking up a value through Automate in a third-party system, things like this. The instructions is really where the rubber meets the street, right? These are detailed step-by-step guidance that agent needs to carry out their tasks successfully. You can configure inputs that you can include into the instruction, and that's a way how the agent needs to know how context that you will provide to it, like a patient form or a policy, how that maps up to the instructions that you give it to them. And finally, every agent at this point will have a set of outcomes, one or multiple outcomes that basically, those are the results that you want to get from the agent. These may include summary, particular data points, or even determinations about decisions the agent made. Maybe what queue does a document need to be routed next to? What person needs to be assigned to a document? Things like that. All right, that was a lot talking about just some technical details. So let's take a look at what this actually means in the real world. How can an agent bring benefit to users? How can it give back times to your team? So the next few slides, we're going to go over a real world use case. Think of a hospital, and every hospital is getting letters from insurance companies about denied insurance claims. There are loads of them, and they are in loads of different formats. There's different verbiage, there are 2 to 3 pages, and every denied claim is going to hit a queue, coming in through some mailroom solution, and somebody needs to read it, figure out why it was denied, decide what to do next, and then actually execute on it. So now imagine, as soon as the claim hits the repository, instead of showing it to the user right away, an agent reads it, identifies the issue, looks up the resolution, and triages the claim. So we can see here, the claims are going into a processing queue. The agent will do its work, do its magic, and distribute the different letters into various queues. The user can go in at this point and they can see right away what needs to be done. There might be items that need human review because maybe there was some ambiguity in the letter and the agent can't do a decision and it leaves it up to a human user in this case. Others, I already know there's documents, additional documents that need to be sent in to the insurance company. Others might be final determination. So the insurance company has already said, we're not going to pay this. And we basically need to figure out what plan B is. We have to look at our policies and take it from there. Now, the user can just open a document from their queues, and they, without reading it, they're going to get the synopsis of why was the claim denied. They also get a list of next steps that they need to do. So they don't have to read 2 or 3 pages. They don't have to figure out what's going on. They're just being told, these are the things you can do. Now, the next step, we could be looking at automating some of these steps too, but that's where we started with this use case. In this case, the determination is final already, so I can't send in more documentation. The recommendation here is that we need to review this and figure out if we can bill the amount to the patient. This doesn't come from the denial letter. This is coming from policies, from reference documents that the agent is consulting. How much time can you save with something like this? We did a little bit of research and took some numbers, claim volumes based from information from the CDC. If on average, you need about 4.5 minutes to read a claim to understand it. For a small hospital with about 100 beds, an employee spends about 9 to 14 work weeks just reading the denial letters. This is not doing any action on it. This is not making any decision. This is just the reading time. For a mid-sized hospital between 100 and 300 beds, this is nearly an entire role just reading it. Obviously, you don't have one person just reading the claims. You would have multiple, but this is the time that they spend. For a large hospital over 300 beds, this can be basically multiple full-time roles that are needed just to read these denial letters and to determine what the action is, not taking the action. So there's a huge amount of savings that can be done with something basic like this. This use case matters because it is very universal. All the agent does is it reads and analyzes some content, summarizes and highlights. It adds context, right? It looks at policies, and adds information to it. It can decide and it can act, right? It could route a document to various queues like we shown before. One customer is a prestigious university. We showed this demo to, even though healthcare is not, their industry. They saw this demo and they said it was one of the best demos of AI in an enterprise situation that they have seen so far at all. They've looked at other AI solutions. They said this is a use case that's realistic, that is a quick win, that is easy to implement, and provides value immediately without getting too complex. But this can be used in many different situations. Government benefit eligibility, right? Screen applications, detect missing information, suggest next steps, basically the same thing. Onboarding packets, validate documentation, flag gaps, update employee records, very similar thing. Financial services, know your customer, cross-check forms, highlight discrepancies, route for action. And we'll see more on these later on. This use case seems a little bit different on the surface, but again, it fits the same kind of pattern. This is electronic benefits, monitoring internal activity. Basically, in California, there's an issue with EBT fraud, which costs agencies hundreds of millions of dollars. I think the exact figure was $180 million in fraud. And sometimes that fraud happens from within. So Detecting insider fraud, though, requires reviewing millions of rows of access log, to flag suspicious behavior, a task that is difficult to scale when somebody needs to do it manually. So an agent can come in here and it can access the logs for high-risk behavior patterns. The patterns are already known. And so in this case, we have the same kind of use case. We have the logs, we have the content, we look at the rules that have been already established, and the agent can go through. So it can flag certain entries in the logs, of people who log in outside of business hours, people who access too many case files in a very short period of time. And it can summarize these anomalies and send them for a human to review. So it's not going to say at this point, okay, here's a fraudster in your system, right? It's just going to flag the suspicious entries and send them to a human to look deeper into this and make a decision. But the point is, it's almost impossible to do this kind of work manually. All right, I've been talking nonstop. I need to take a little break, have a sip of water. You're going to hear a lot going forward about agentic solutions. That's where we come in and we actually start building some of these out into out-of-the-box solution. Megan Caraballo and her team are actually taking charge of this. And I'll let Megan take it from here and walk us through some of these. Do you have control, Megan? Did it work? Okay.
Yes, I think so. Thanks, Lars, and thanks all for having me here. I am Megan Caraballo. I am a product leader in our application intelligence organization. And so Lars has talked to you all so far about some use cases that your tech-savvy customers can start building, right away as Agent Builder is released in the next couple of weeks here. But I wanted to give you all a preview of an initiative underway with Industry Solutions and our Application Intelligence org that's intended to be a fast follow to the initial release of Agent Builder. So our team is actively working to define and prototype productized agentic solutions that are targeted for our industry customers. So these are going to be common industry use cases that are predefined to work towards creation of, a full library of pre-configured solutions that our customers and partners can take and tailor and extend to work with their existing workflows or new workflows, right? That come with some level of pre-configuration to help make it easier to adopt that agent in a very quick win format, as Lars had mentioned with the denied claims example. So listed here are a few examples that I will talk through on the following slides. A quick caveat here is that we're in very early prototype phases and still actively working with customers on feedback. So as we get into Q3, Q4, the final list and scope of these could change. But the goal here is to give you an idea of A, what Agent Builder can do and the types of things it can help act or decide on, and then B, to give you a preview of where we're going as an organization, because we'll always welcome more ideas and suggestions for those standard use cases. All right. Lars, I might need your help advancing this slide. Oh, here we go. Okay. All right, so the first example that I wanted to talk through is for financial services, targeted at a know your customer compliance situation. And so here we've got documents that come in for a financial services institution's customers, and there's applications, documentation that they need to sort through in the beginning of that process. So here, similar to what Lars said, we can check to make sure all the documents are complete, whether they align with declared information in the application, and flag discrepancies to reduce the amount of time that individuals have to take during the onboarding and compliance period for processing loans and onboarding new clients. Similarly, in the insurance space, Many of our customers have historically built complex on-base workflows to determine if a claim or a packet is in good order before it can be processed in their line of business system, in their claim system, policy system. So here, we are looking at insurance policy packets just to ensure that all the required documents are complete, signed, and up to date before routing for further review, again, minimizing the amount of time it would take for someone to process the policy document. And ensure compliance and consistency throughout the process, reducing time and opportunity for manual error. On the government side, eligibility determination for social services. So as requests or applications come in for social services, the AI agent can help determine if that candidate meets defined eligibility criteria that a person would be looking for, and ensure that all of the information submitted is complete. And again, help provide consistency and fairness for determining eligibility for social services. I am going to turn it over to Maggie Mail and AJ Mead for overview of our higher ed use case, and they'll actually provide a live demo of the prototype they've started to configure for that space.
Yep, so this prototype is still in process of kind of finalization. I'll talk through kind of what we've been able to develop so far and what are some of the components that we're still working on. But the case use incidents that we came up for this is like a student residency appeal process. This is a student solution that's triggered by a student where they are submitting forms in an ad hoc situation to kind of contest for a residency, for state residency. So generally kind of what a student would need is document dates that show a residency is greater than or equal to 365 days before admission for that semester. So what we're kind of working with these documents is that we're comparing this supporting documents against the form. The idea being that, in a student solution, this might be behind a portal where some of this is auto-populated, auto-generated, or it could be, something on the website that they have to sort of populate themselves and then kind of submit. So this agent-driven solution would allow to kind of automate some of the steps for that residency appeal process, allowing you to kind of like look for certain criteria on those forms, such as a state, such as the date that would kind of, show when this document is supporting, and then compare that against some of the student information in the solution. So it can be tailored to kind of align with what that particular university needs. But that's just kind of the general idea for this right now. It does automate some of those validation processes that we're kind of, talking about. It also can kind of reduce some of those manual review hours. And it also can kind of allow to then trigger a process where the student is notified if there's something that there is immediately flagged on the document that isn't supporting their case, or if they would need to kind of, submit a different document to kind of allow for that. And then one of the things that we're still working on is like tailoring the form, because there are different criteria if you're a military student versus a student who's kind of submitting the documents, just kind of showing it through tax documentation. So we are still working on the form to kind of tailor those particular instances. But with that, I'll turn it over to AJ to kind of to demo where we're at right now. But the idea just is that we can kind of really use this for any student-led solution, and you can kind of tweak it for other student scenarios as well. We're using it for residency in this case, but there are other appeals processes that a student may be able to do as well.
Thanks, Maggie. I will go ahead and share my screen. I'm going to be doing a demo of the residency appeal that Maggie just talked about. So again, quick disclaimer, this Agentic solution is still under development. It's a beta product, so it's very much still a work in progress. We just wanted to give you guys a look into some of the use cases that we're exploring. So what we've done is created an agent to assist with the residency appeal process. Again, a student would initiate this type of appeal if they were granted out-of-state tuition, but they believe their circumstances make them eligible for in-state. So What we're going to do in this demo is go ahead and submit some supporting documentation, submitting a form, and then the agent is actually going to make the decision for us on whether or not the student meets the requirements for the residency appeal. So what you're seeing here, this is just a Highland app builder that we're using to surface the form. Typically, the student might access this form behind a student portal. You can see here we're using a Unity form, and I'm going to manually enter in this information. But again, typically, if we were to hide this behind a portal, these fields would populate automatically. So I'm just going to manually enter in some data here. And I'm going to select my, let's say I was passed for admissions on, let's do the 25th. Let's do this. And the claimed residency date, I've been here for a couple of years. Let's say I've been here since June 20th, 2023. Then as I scroll down, you can see that there is documentation that I can attach. I'm going to attach a state driver's license. And I'm going to attach a mortgage deed. And then I will go ahead and click submit. So while this is going in, I'm going to flip over to OnBase here. I can kind of show you guys a little bit what's happening behind the scenes. If I refresh, you can see that the form came into OnBase workflow. It's in the initial queue. I'm going to manually run this timer. Typically, this would happen behind the scenes in a production environment. So after the first timer's run, it's going to quickly go through form processing and then packaging. At this point, all that's really happening is we're taking the form that the student submitted, the supporting documents, and we're kind of bundling those together into a package. You can kind of think of that as like a manila folder. And as soon as the document hits processing, this is really where we're starting to communicate with Agent Builder. So behind the scenes, kind of how this is communicating with one another is OnBase is using a Unity script to call Agent Builder. Agent Builder then communicates with the LLM using the prompt that we configured. I think Lars walked through that in some of our slides. And then what we're doing is from that form, the data that we entered, we're passing some of those values into the form, and the agent is going to use those for its evaluation. So this takes a minute to run. I'm going to go ahead and just open my report here. This is one that I ran right before that's identical. But you can see here that the report is generated by, in this case, we're using .comp to generate the report based on the output from Agent Builder. And it says review required. So if I scroll down a little bit further, it's going to show me the two documents that I submitted, and it looks like on the mortgage statement that there was some sort of date mismatch that needs to be looked into further. So at this point, someone can take a look at the supporting documentation, see what was going on, and kind of make a determination on whether or not their residency status is valid. So again, this is just one single example of how we can use agentic solutions within to solve a business process. There's lots of form-based or appeal type processes that are really good. That's a really good fit in the higher ed space for agentic solutions. So we are really looking forward to it. So thanks for your time.
Thanks, AJ. Let me jump over in my presentation. All right, here we go. Can you see my screen again? Let's make sure I switched over.
Yes.
Okay. So we've been talking a lot. You've seen some demos, you've seen some use cases. I want to back up a little bit. Some conversations we had, whether it's with customers, whether it's with partners, sometimes AI can kind of feel like a closed door for many. There's a lot of ambiguity. There's a lot of uncertainty. It can be intimidating. What can AI do? What can't it do? What are the technical requirements, right? There's a lot of questions. This is really about selling magic. It's not necessarily going in and saying, okay, we can solve all your problems at once. That's even sometimes a little bit of a turnoff to customers. If you come in, we have the magic bullets for all your problems. This is more about starting to identify some of these use cases like we've shown before, where we even take something simpler like reading a document and presenting you with some next steps. It's not solving the entire problem, but as we've seen with the denied claims use case, there can be tremendous savings just making that a little bit easier. And from there you can expand out, right? You can find other similar use cases, or you can expand the use cases. Now I know what documents you want. Now maybe I can have an agent to collect those documents, right? And make this easier. So you don't have to know all the answers right away. You just have to be kind of curious and start opening that door. Starting small, win fast, right? So here the idea is, look for processes like reading a document to determine next steps, comparing content to a policy or a rule set, triaging or prioritizing based on what's in the document, right? You have to read the document to figure out, okay, there's a due date somewhere, right? Where's that due date? What is that due date? It can be one-off data extraction, right? We're not saying here use Agent Builder to do bulk data extraction, but sometimes you do have that use case where okay, I need to know this one piece of information from this document, right? Just to drive forward a process. You can do this. And these work because they're repetitive, boring processes that are rule driven, right? The rules are very well established. Humans add limited value beyond just interpretation. They're painful. They can delay outcomes, right? Missing those due dates. But they're typically very low risk to automate. You can tap into existing processes and try to enhance them. But when they work, they make AI visibly useful fast without requiring major change. I want to talk about this guy, and let's call him Gary. Gary works at a big company, super smart. He's been there for 15 years. Really, really knows his stuff. But every morning when Gary comes in, he spends the first couple hours of his day just combing through his inbox, whether it's his email or his queues in workflow. He's opening documents, he's reading through, he's opening attachment, he's checking what they're about, deciding what to do, logging notes into various different third-party systems. So basically, Gary is a very expensive, extremely well-educated clipboard. You can give me a thumbs up if anyone here has met Gary before. Or anyone who thinks he's Gary? I see a couple, there they come. And yes, everybody knows Gary, and the manager's on his back, basically, Gary, how's the backlog looking? And Gary's like, yep, almost there, before I can start my other work. Gary is no slouch, though, far from it. He's really productive. He's good at what he's doing. He's just stuck in this loop, right? Reading, interpreting, filing, forwarding, none of that really requires his experience. It's administrative work, but it just takes time and eyeballs. So now they get the Agent Builder, right? And the Agent Builder, they can deploy agents that start doing some of this work for him, right? That is reading the content, that is helping him to triage content, that helps him focus on what he really needs to do. It helps him with decisions. It can make some decisions, right? If something is routed the wrong way, it can correct it. It can flag anything unusual. All of this before Gary even gets to his desk. So what does Gary do now? He picks up the phone. He's solving real issues. He's calling people directly to solve exceptions, right? He can talk to vendors. He can talk to customers. He can do these things that really require building relationships. And then the best part, what his colleagues told him, with all that new breathing room, he was actually able to find that office stapler that somebody replaced 6 weeks ago. stop using your best people to triage inboxes, whether it's a queue, whether it's your actual email inbox, right? Let agents handle that, right? Let your team focus on conversations, decisions, and let them build relationships, the things that really matter. How to spot opportunities and sell values. I'm not going through every point here in the interest of time. You can look at the slides afterwards. But some of the things to highlight, existing workflow customers, they're still relying on people to manually process queues, right? That's something to look for. Teams that are overwhelmed with inbound documents that need to be reviewed, right? Departments that are still doing a lot of manual triaging, and customers that drop hints, looking to automate certain tasks that they haven't been able to automate so far. Conversations you can have about this, is asking them about, people like Gary, your subject matter experts, what is taking up their time? How can you free up time for them? Are they missing deadlines, because they're hidden in documents that are at the bottom of the queue? Those are good spots to find. What happens to incoming document when no one's available to process them, right? Again, the deadline that enters your inbox Friday afternoon, and somebody would have to look at it before. Things you can emphasize are that agents can assist humans. They don't necessarily replace them, right? They just move humans up in the value chain to focus on higher value items. They play well with existing systems. We can integrate with Panel, OnBase specifically, or you can use Automate, meet the customer where they are. If they have a third-party repo, we can do these kind of things. We win because agent and humans together make for faster decisions, fewer errors, and they scale better, right? When you have these increases in sudden demand or so, right? Now your inbox has 150 instead of 50 documents, right? You can scale it by inserting agents into the process. As I said before, don't get bogged down with technical details, how this all works, right? You don't need to be able to explain how everything works. You just need to be able to ask the right questions, and focusing on uncovering the moments in the process when things slow down, right? Where somebody has to stop, read something, make a decision, take manual actions. Those are friction points, and that's where the agent builder fits in. And don't forget about OnBase. I've seen a question before, does it only work with OnBase? So no, you can really use it with everything. But we have thousands of customers that are using OnBase, and probably the majority of them do have workflows, right? So that's a place where you can start. Identify queues or processes where humans still read document and make decisions. That's where an agent can come in. So anytime if OnBase pauses for a human to stop and step in, that's an opportunity where maybe an agent can fit the bills. And if you do use it in OnBase, we have a good integration pattern. It's easy to do, and there's no upgrade required in OnBase to actually make that work. Just in case you didn't hear that what I just said, you don't have to upgrade OnBase to make this happen. So you can go back to OnBase, I think, all the way to OnBase 9 if needed, and enable agents in the workflows. Don't think just about OnBase, but it's a good way to start, right? Because you can minimize change management. People don't like change. You don't want to go into that insurance company that has 600 queues and tell them, hey, you got to change all of this if you want to use it, right? You don't want to scare them away. You just want to look at what they have and see how we can make this better. But that being said, if customers are open to do things in a new way, lead with Automate, right? And design new modern AI workflows with the full power of CIC. One other question that often comes, knowledge discovery versus agent builder, right? It goes a little bit back to the slide that I had earlier about the spectrum, where you move from left to right. There are use cases where you want to use knowledge discovery, every time when you need to do more like research, something that doesn't have a predefined process, right? That's where you want to use discovery. If you want the system to do something before the user even sees it, that's where the agent builder comes in. So you can think about it, knowledge discovery, maybe on an HR portal, you have a chatbot there and you enable people to ask questions about our HR policies. In that case, it doesn't make sense to use agent builder because you don't know what the questions are going to be, right? So let people drive this. But maybe in the new hire, in the onboarding process, an agent can automatically review submitted forms, check the required documents, notify HR about missing items, right? Those are things you want to happen automatically. So that's where you use Agent Builder. Agent Builder pricing, probably the question everybody has been waiting for. I don't have all the details yet. So the pricing team is still working on it. We do want to have a pricing model that's relatively simple to work with. The one that we're settling on will include an access fee, an annual fee to get access to the technology, right? You get the agent builder, that includes the UI for configuring them, that includes the APIs, that includes the full life cycle management for agents. And then you pay for outcomes, right? If you remember when we talked about the configuration, you can configure outcomes on the agent. For the denied claims agent, those are 4 outcomes that we had set up for the prototype. Each one of these provides business value, right? So these are what we're going to be charging for, on a usage basis. That makes for relatively simple pricing. It's not determined by token count, so you don't have to try to anticipate how many input and output tokens are there. There's really no restriction on the number of agents that you can deploy. It simply assesses the number of decisions or actions that are required to drive your agentic process. So it's straightforward to clarify, to plan for, and to expand on. You get a lot of transparency with this type of pricing. And we owe you the details of this, what are actually the numeric values behind it, and we're getting this soon, and we'll make this available within the next few days before the release. To wrap it up, what can you do next, right? You can work with Megan Caraballo and her team, to understand the agentic solutions that are coming and how you can collaborate with them, supply additional requirements, help them validate some of these solutions, right? Talk to the sales engineers, to show one of the industry solution teams demos, right? Watch them yourself, show them to your customers. Identify a content-heavy process in your top accounts by asking some of these questions that we've discussed earlier in these slides, right? Just try to identify these first processes where people need to stop, read something, make a decision, right? That's your way in. Start putting agents to work. If you want to look at it, you can scan this QR code. It gets you to our technical documentation that's public on GitHub. So you can start taking a look at it. If you already have an environment, you can add subscription for the API and for the UX. We also have a Teams channel in case you want to start asking questions. Obviously, you can reach out to myself or anyone on our teams as well. And last slide, Agent Builder enables you to build agents that work the way you work and do the work you don't want to do. Right? I think that's a statement you can make. I don't think anyone wants to spend his morning like Gary, right? Going in, have a bulk of documents that you need to go through just to figure out, just to build your to-do list, right? You just want to start go in there, start working, start bringing value. And that's it from our part. I hope that helped getting you an initial overview, what it is, how you can sell it. If we missed something, again, we're happy to hear the feedback. We have a couple minutes left. If there's any more questions that we want to take live.
Yes, thank you so much, Lars, and all of the presenters. So much great information. I will reinforce that this deck will be made available on the HighSpot page, so be sure to head there. That was dropped in the link earlier in the chat. We do have a few minutes for some questions. There are several that were answered and documented that will also be included in the HighSpot page. But since we do have a few moments, we have a question from Andre, and he says, great presentation. We see some players such as Automation Anywhere where they are pushing through their bots orchestration AI to not only automate tasks, but apply AI when doing task automation like a human will do it. Are we thinking also to integrate Highland RPA by having the possibility to an agent to use bot capabilities and provide intelligence to task automation?
Okay, so let me digest this a little bit. There's a lot in there. So bot orchestration can be done in a lot of different ways. The first way we have, even if you look at something like on-base workflow or in Automate, right? You can build a process that includes multiple agents, right? To do various steps of the process, right? An agent can return outputs. You can feed those outputs into the next agent. That is all possible with today's technology already. Going forward, though, we are looking, our roadmap has items to actually enable agent-to-agent collaboration more natively, right? Where an agent can make that decision to call another agent, to call a tool, right? So at that point, we get more into that spectrum where, agents become fully autonomous. Other integrations with RPA or so, we are looking for requirements. We're looking for use cases, right? To include, different areas of the software, we would have to build the tools to enable that, right? So if you have good use cases, we'd be happy to have the discussion, explore that, and see how these integrations need to look like. I hope that helps.
Great, thank you so much. I think we probably have time for one more. If your question was not answered, again, these will be collected and we'll be sure to get that Q&A out on the page. One more, looks like it's typing, but we'll do both. Can a Highland agent work without Pano or CIC to be called by a core system directly? Rohan is typing this answer, but if anyone wants to take that live or let it be,
I could
let
take
it be
it live
typed.
instead of typing.
Okay.
I think the answer to it would be technically yes. It's an API call, so you can call it from anywhere. I think the more important part is what kind of workflow or process does it fit in. That's where you need more control, the way the response is given back, the feedback that you want to capture from it, going forward, what you want to learn from it. So wherever you have your process, wherever you have your workflow, and if you have the ability to monitor it and manage it, that's where you want to call the agent from. So a better way would be to put them into a on-base workflow or an automate workflow in CI/CD and call it from there. But yeah, if there are existing workflows built and you want to start calling agents from outside, technically it is possible. You have to think about what the overall solution looks like and not just how you call the agent from.
Very good. Thank you. All right. So thank you again. A reminder to take the quiz from last week. Be on the lookout for the quiz coming up in the Academy Weekly tomorrow. Complete that survey, and be sure to head to HighSpot, which will house all of this great information. So thanks again. I'm going to go ahead and end the webinar, and have a great rest of your week, everyone.